The morning my daughter-in-law handed me a manila envelope across my own kitchen table, she was smiling. That should have been the first warning. Vanessa never smiled at me like that, warm, almost rehearsed, unless she wanted something. I didn't open it right away. I poured myself a second cup of coffee, set the pot back on the burner, and sat down across from her. My son Marcus was standing near the window with his hands in his pockets, looking out at the backyard. Not at me, at the backyard. "What's this?" I asked. "Just some paperwork, Arthur," Vanessa said. "Nothing complicated. We need you to sign a few things before the wedding." The wedding was 6 weeks away. Marcus and Vanessa had been engaged for almost 2 years, and in all that time, there had been exactly 0 conversations about paperwork. So I put my coffee down and opened the envelope. It was a quitclaim deed. For my house. I want you to understand what that house meant to me. I bought it in 1989 with my wife Carol, 2 months before Marcus was born. A 3-bedroom colonial on a quiet street in Dayton, Ohio. We painted every room ourselves. Carol picked out yellow for the kitchen because she said it made mornings feel less hard. When Marcus was 7, he fell off his bike in the driveway, and I sat on the front step with him for an hour, holding a bag of frozen peas to his knee, telling him the story of every scar I'd ever gotten. When Carol died 4 years ago, ovarian cancer, 14 months from diagnosis to the end, I sat in that kitchen every night for 3 months and talked to her photograph like she was still there, because I didn't know what else to do. That house was 35 years of my life, and now my son was standing at the window, not looking at me, while his fiancée slid a deed across my kitchen table. "You want me to sign over the house?" I said. "It's not like that," Marcus said, still not turning around. "It's for tax purposes." Our financial advisor said. "Whose financial advisor?" A pause. "Vanessa's family's advisor." I set the papers down. "Marcus, look at me." He turned. He had Carol's eyes, that same pale gray blue that changed color depending on the light. Right now they looked like a morning that hadn't decided yet whether to rain. "Her parents are contributing to the wedding," he said. "A significant amount. And they want to make sure they just want the assets to be structured correctly before we get married." "Structured correctly," I repeated. "It's standard," Vanessa said. "My parents did the same thing before their anniversary trip to Europe. It's just how people protect." "I'm 67 years old," I said quietly. "I've been a licensed contractor for 38 years. I've signed a lot of legal documents in my life. I know what a quitclaim deed is." The kitchen went very still. I should back up, because to understand what happened next, you need to understand how we got here. And that story starts not with Vanessa, and not with Marcus, but with me, and a mistake I made out of love. When Carol died, I fell apart in ways I didn't show anyone. I kept working, kept showing up, kept mowing the lawn and paying my bills, but inside I was running on a kind of low-grade grief that doesn't announce itself. It just quietly hollows you out. Marcus came home for 2 weeks after the funeral, and during those 2 weeks, he was the son I remembered. The one who used to sit at Carol's feet while she read aloud, the one who cried at her bedside at the end and held her hand and told her she'd been the best mother anyone ever had. During those 2 weeks, I thought, we're going to be okay. Then he went back to Columbus, and Vanessa came back into the picture. I won't pretend I ever fully warmed to Vanessa. I tried. God knows I tried. But there was always something underneath her politeness that felt calculated. The way she'd compliment my cooking and then suggest a restaurant. The way she'd ask about Carol and then pivot the conversation to the wedding venue within 60 seconds. Small things. Things that made me feel paranoid for noticing them. About 8 months after Carol passed, Marcus called and asked if I'd add him to my bank accounts. Just for emergencies, he said. In case something happened to me, he'd have access and be able to handle things without going through probate. I was 64, in good health, and I thought, that's a reasonable thing for a son to ask. I went to the bank and added him as a joint account holder on both my checking and my money market account. Combined, there was just over $340,000 in those accounts. Carol's life insurance, my savings, 30-some years of careful living. I trusted him. I want you to sit with that for a moment before I tell you what he did with it. 3 weeks before the wedding, I was in Zoxville visiting my brother Dennis for a long weekend. I'd been looking forward to it for months. Dennis and I used to fish together every summer growing up, and we'd gotten out of the habit for years. And I was trying to get back to the things that made me feel like myself again. We were out on the water early Saturday morning when my phone buzzed. It was a banking alert. Then another one. Then a third. 3 transfers, $50,000 each, moved to an external account I didn't recognize. Then a fourth. Then a fifth. By the time I got back to shore and had cell signal, my checking account showed a balance of $847. I called Marcus. He picked up on the second ring. "Dad," he said. He didn't sound surprised to hear from me. He didn't ask why I was calling. He just said "Dad," in a flat, careful voice, the way you talk to someone when you've already decided what you're going to say. "Marcus, what did you do?" It wasn't really a question. "The wedding costs more than we planned," he said. "Vanessa's parents covered their half, but we came up short. I needed to cover the venue deposit, the catering, the rehearsal dinner. That was $340,000. There were other things too." A pause. "The honeymoon. Some debt Vanessa had. We needed a fresh start." I stood there on the bank of the Tennessee River in my fishing waders, with my phone pressed against my ear, and I did not say anything for a very long time. "Dad, don't! I'll pay it back. I swear. Once we're settled and, Marcus," my voice came out quieter than I expected. "Did you also do something with the house?" The silence that followed lasted 4 seconds. I counted them. "Vanessa found a buyer," he said. "An investor. It closed on Thursday. We needed the liquidity and the timing." I hung up. Dennis was watching me from the boat. He's 3 years older than me, a retired high school principal, one of the most steady people I've ever known. He looked at my face and said, "Arthur, what happened?" I told him. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What do you need?" That question, simple, immediate, no drama, is the reason I didn't completely fall apart in the next 24 hours. What do you need? Not "I can't believe it" or "How could he" or "What were you thinking adding him to those accounts?" Just, what do you need? What I needed, it turned out, was a phone call I should have made 6 months earlier. Her name is Patricia Kellner. She's been my attorney since 2003. We worked together on a commercial construction dispute, and she's handled my estate planning ever since. It was a Sunday morning when I called her. She answered anyway. I laid out everything. The joint account transfers, the house sale, the quitclaim deed Vanessa had tried to get me to sign 6 weeks earlier, which, by some miracle of stubbornness, I hadn't. I told her about adding Marcus to the accounts after Carol died, and about the house title, which was still only in my name, because I had, in fact, never signed anything over. There was a pause on her end. "Arthur," Patricia said, "you said the house closed on Thursday." "That's what he told me. And your name is still on title, as far as I know." "Let me make some calls," she said. "Don't go back to Dayton yet. Don't contact Marcus. Don't contact any real estate agents or anyone representing a buyer. Just sit tight and let me work." I spent Sunday night in Dennis's guest room staring at the ceiling. At some point, around 2 in the morning, I got up and sat on his back porch and looked at the sky and had the most honest conversation with Carol I'd ever had with her photograph. I told her I was sorry I'd let this happen. I told her I was sorry I'd trusted the wrong version of our son, the one shaped by 4 years of Vanessa's influence rather than 30-some years of ours. I told her I didn't know what I was going to do if the house was really gone. But even as I said it, I knew something didn't add up. Because I had never signed that quitclaim deed. And Vanessa had been trying to get me to sign it 6 weeks before the wedding, which meant either Marcus had forged my signature, and I didn't want to believe my son was capable of that, or the sale had been attempted fraudulently, and whoever the buyer was had either been deceived or was in on it. Patricia called me Monday morning. "The house didn't close," she said. "Someone submitted documentation to the title company using what appears to be a forged signature. The title company caught a discrepancy during their final review and flagged it. The transaction is in dispute. Your house is not sold." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in 48 hours. "What about the money?" I asked. "That's more complicated," she said, "but we have options." Here's what I learned about those options in the following week, and what I want anyone listening to understand before they ever add a family member to a bank account. When you make someone a joint account holder, not a beneficiary, not an authorized user, but a full joint holder, they have legal access to those funds. In most cases, a bank cannot and will not reverse transfers made by a joint account holder. That's the nature of the arrangement. Marcus had taken the money legally, in the narrow technical sense that he had access to it. But Patricia had been doing estate planning long enough to know that the story rarely ends with, and therefore nothing can be done. She sent a letter to Marcus's attorney. He'd apparently retained one, which told me Vanessa had been planning this well in advance, outlining that we intended to pursue a civil lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The forged document on the house sale was the anchor. That was criminal, not just civil. Patricia was in contact with the Dayton Police Department and the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office. The letter also noted that we had documentation suggesting the wire transfers were made in coordination with a fraudulent real estate transaction, which potentially implicated the money transfers as part of a broader scheme. Marcus called me that Thursday night. Vanessa's voice was in the background. He sounded nothing like the person who'd spoken to me in that flat, careful voice on the riverbank. He sounded like my son again, which, I'll be honest with you, made everything harder, not easier. "Dad, we made a mistake," he said. "We panicked. Vanessa's parents pulled their contribution 2 months before the wedding, and we were already committed to everything, and we spiraled. You forged my signature." Marcus Vanessa handled the paperwork. "I didn't know it had gone that far. I swear I didn't know. I believed part of that. I don't know which part." "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want my money back," I said. "And I want to understand how we got here." The negotiation took 3 weeks. Marcus and Vanessa had already spent a significant portion of the money: venue deposit, catering, the honeymoon reservation, a chunk of Vanessa's student loan debt. What remained was in a joint account in both their names. Through Patricia, we reached an agreement. Marcus would return $280,000 immediately, sign a promissory note for the remaining $60,000 to be paid back over 4 years, and Vanessa would have no further legal exposure in exchange for her signed cooperation on the real estate fraud documentation, which the prosecutor's office needed to close out their investigation. The wedding did not happen. Not because I stopped it, because Marcus called it off himself, 2 weeks after everything came to light. He called me from a Marriott in Columbus. He'd moved out of the apartment he shared with Vanessa. And we talked for almost 2 hours. He told me things I'd suspected and things that surprised me. He told me Vanessa had been driving the financial strategy for over a year. He told me the plan had originally been to get me to sign the quitclaim deed voluntarily, but when I didn't, she decided to move forward anyway. He told me he'd known it was wrong and had told himself it was a loan they'd pay back, and that I'd never even have to find out. I didn't interrupt him. I let him talk until there was nothing left to say. Then I asked him one question. "Did you think about what your mother would have said?" He didn't answer for a long time. "That's why I called it off," he said finally. "I'm not going to tell you Marcus and I are back to where we were. We're not. Some things break in a particular way that means even when you mend them, you can always see the line. But we're talking. He's in therapy. He calls me every Sunday, not to ask for anything, just to call. Last month he drove down to Dayton and we repainted the kitchen together. He picked yellow, without me suggesting it. I noticed that. I didn't say anything. But I noticed. Here's what I want to tell you. If you're a parent listening to this story, do not add your children to your bank accounts out of grief or loneliness, or because it seems like the practical thing to do in a hard moment. If you want them to be able to manage your affairs, if something happens to you, talk to an estate attorney and set up a durable power of attorney with proper safeguards and a clear scope of authority. Keep your own financial identity intact. A joint account holder has the same rights to your money as you do. There is almost no legal recourse if they choose to exercise that right. Get a will. Update it after major life changes, a death, a marriage, a divorce. If you have significant assets, consider a revocable living trust. These aren't things you do because you don't trust your family. These are things you do because love doesn't protect against bad judgment, addiction, financial desperation, or the influence of the wrong partner. Carol and I spent decades building something together. I almost lost it in 3 transfers on a Saturday morning because I was lonely and wanted to believe everything was going to be fine. The house is still mine. I'm sitting in the kitchen right now, writing this. The walls are the same yellow Carol picked out in 1989, a little faded now, but I don't mind. Some things should stay the way they were meant to be. I still talk to her photograph some nights. I think that's probably not going to change. But lately I've been talking to her about different things, not grief, not what I almost lost, more like updates, progress reports, the kitchen repaint, the Sunday calls, the way Marcus laughed last month at something Dennis said over dinner, a real laugh, unguarded, the kind he used to laugh when he was 12 years old and the world was still mostly simple. She would have wanted to know about that laugh. So I made sure to tell her.